Welcome to Relation Tales. Please like this video and subscribe Relation Tales. We're grateful for each and every one of you. Let us know where in the world you're tuning in from. We'd love to hear from you in the comments. Let's begin. People always said we were the perfect couple. Tessa and I met at a friend's barbecue 8 years ago. She was the kind of woman who could walk into a crowd and make the air change. She had this effortless confidence, a laugh that could drown out the music, and eyes that carried both warmth and calculation. Back then, I didn't notice the second part. Life with her started like a movie. Weekend road trips, late-night pizza on the couch, whispered plans about buying a lake house one day. I worked as an architect. She worked in marketing. Our schedules were chaos, but somehow we made it work, or so I thought. The first warning came subtle. She began spending longer hours at work, brushing off dinners with excuses like, "My boss added a last-minute review," or "It's campaign season." You know how clients are. I believed her, because love makes you blind to patterns that are screaming the truth. Then it started. The perfume I didn't recognize. The half-smile when her phone buzzed. The way she turned her screen slightly away from me. She'd come home late, smelling like someone else's cologne masked beneath mint gum. Still, every night, she'd crawl into bed and say, "I'm exhausted, James," as if exhaustion was a reasonable explanation for distance. One night, I asked, "You happy lately?" She froze, fork halfway to her mouth. "Of course. Why would you ask that?" "Because you don't look at me the same way." Her eyes softened, but her tone didn't. "You're overthinking again. You always do this when work gets stressful." Maybe she was right. Maybe I was overthinking. So I buried my doubts beneath more work. I started getting home later myself, pretending not to care, pretending not to notice her smile when I mentioned a female client. I just wanted to see if jealousy still lived somewhere in her heart. It didn't. A week later, I saw her car parked outside a quiet Italian restaurant downtown. I recognized the car parked beside hers, Mike's, her new project manager, the man she'd mentioned casually over dinner, saying, "He's a bit full of himself, but smart." I waited outside for almost an hour, convincing myself I was being paranoid. But when she finally walked out, she wasn't walking alone. They didn't kiss. They didn't have to. It was the way she laughed, the same way she used to laugh with me. That was enough to crush something I hadn't realized was already broken. I didn't confront her that night. Instead, I went home, poured a drink, and watched the clock. She came in at midnight, humming a tune, pretending life was still normal. I pretended with her, too. I wanted her to feel safe, because betrayal tastes best when served unexpectedly. Over the next few days, I planned quietly. Checked phone records, pulled credit card statements, found hotel charges disguised as business expenses. Each discovery hurt less than the last, because pain eventually becomes numbness. Then came the night everything finally snapped. The living room clock glowed past 11. The house was silent except for the dull hum of the ceiling fan. Her dinner sat untouched on the table, and my patience was running thin. My phone buzzed against the countertop. It was her. The message looked innocent, careless even, but to me, it read like a confession wrapped in excuses. That was the moment I stopped being the husband who waited and became the man who planned. I didn't reply with anger. I replied with truth disguised as sarcasm, something that would let her know I wasn't blind anymore. And as soon as I hit send, the silence that followed told me I'd hit the right nerve. What she didn't know was that her bags were already packed in the hallway, folded neatly, zipped quietly, prepared for the moment she'd walk through that door and realize the life she played with had just ended. And when she finally did, her face told me everything. When I heard her car pull into the driveway that night, it was almost midnight. The sound of tires on wet gravel felt louder than usual, like even the earth knew something was about to break. I stood by the window, my reflection pale against the glass, watching her headlights slice through the dark before dying out. For a second, I wondered if she rehearsed what lie she'd feed me this time. The door opened slowly, creaking the way it always did. Then came her soft voice, cautious but familiar. "James, you're still up." I didn't answer immediately. I wanted her to feel the quiet, the kind of quiet that presses on your chest until breathing feels like guilt. She stepped into the light, still in her office heels, hair tousled, pretending she'd just had a long day. "Sorry, I got caught up again." Mike wanted. Her sentence died halfway. Because she saw them, Two large suitcases lined up near the entryway, perfectly zipped, her name tag hanging from one of them. The color drained from her face. What's this?" she whispered. I looked at her calmly, leaning on the counter. "Travel essentials," I said flatly. "I figured you'd need them since you like staying out so much." Her lips trembled. "James, what are you talking about?" I picked up my phone from the counter and swiped through the gallery. Screenshots, GPS logs, credit card receipts, and a few candid photos I'd taken from my car outside the restaurant where she and Mike had dinner 3 nights in a row. I turned the screen toward her. "I'm talking about this." Her eyes widened. "You? How could you? How could I?" I interrupted quietly. "No, Tessa. The question is, how could you?" She sank onto the couch, shaking her head. "It's not what it looks like." I laughed under my breath. "You said the same thing the night your phone died, and you came home smelling like someone else's cologne." Tears welled in her eyes. "Please, I made a mistake." I cut her off again. "No, you made choices. Mistakes happen once. Choices are repeated." The room went silent, except for the sound of her uneven breathing. I could see her hands trembling, clutching her purse like it could somehow anchor her back to normal. But normal had left weeks ago. "You can't just throw me out," she finally whispered, desperation cracking through her voice. "We can fix this, James. I swear I'll end it." I shook my head slowly. "You already ended it. The moment you decided to lie." I wasn't yelling. I wasn't crying. I'd done those things alone, quietly, in the days leading up to this moment. Now, all I felt was cold certainty. She tried to stand, reaching for me like touch could erase betrayal. "Please, I love you." I stepped back. "Don't. You don't get to use that word anymore." The sight of her crumbling might have broken me once. But tonight, it just confirmed how far she'd fallen. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she whispered. "It just happened." I tilted my head slightly. "And when exactly did it just happen? Before or after the hotel reservations under your company name? Or when you lied to my face about that conference in Chicago?" Her knees buckled, and she sat back down, crying quietly in her hands. For a long moment, I just stood there, watching the person I once trusted more than anyone unravel piece by piece. That's when I said it, softly but firmly. "Tessa, you'll find the divorce papers on the kitchen counter. My lawyer already sent copies to your office." Her head snapped up. "You can't mean that." "Oh, I do," I replied. "In fact, your company's HR department will receive a few documents tomorrow morning, too. Might want to start updating your resume." Her mouth fell open in shock. "You wouldn't." I looked straight at her. "You think I didn't know you were seeing your boss? The same man who wrote those late-night emails you kept deleting." Her silence was the answer I'd expected. "I made a few calls today," I continued. "Turns out the company has strict policies about workplace relationships, especially undisclosed ones between superiors and employees." "James, please," she whispered. "You'll ruin me." I met her eyes. "You ruined us." The words hung there, sharp and heavy, and I knew nothing more needed to be said. For a moment, neither of us moved. She stared at the floor, hands shaking, realizing everything she'd built on lies was collapsing around her. I walked past her toward the front door, pausing only once. "The cab should be here in 5 minutes. You'll want to go before the neighbors start wondering why you're still here." When I stepped outside, the night air hit me hard, cold but freeing. I leaned against the railing, breathing deeply for the first time in weeks. Through the window, I saw her standing frozen in front of her luggage, eyes wide, mascara streaked. That was the exact moment she understood. She wasn't just leaving the house. She was leaving the life she thought she could manipulate. And me? I wasn't the man she could play anymore. Because betrayal doesn't end with heartbreak. Sometimes, it ends with silence and a locked door. The morning after Tessa left, the house felt like an echo of itself. Too still, too neat, too silent. For 7 years, her perfume lingered in the hallways. Her laughter lived in the walls. Now, all that was left were shadows of conversations and the faint scent of betrayal that refused to fade. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the untouched cup of coffee I'd poured out of habit. For the first time in months, I wasn't waiting for a text, an excuse, or another late-night lie. It was over. But closure wasn't what I wanted. Accountability was. That same morning, I opened my laptop and logged into the work portal for her company. I still had access. She'd asked me once to help her draft a marketing proposal, and the login stayed saved. Inside her folder, I found everything I needed: company policies, her emails with timestamps, even a private memo from HR about professional conduct during travel. She'd signed it. So had Mike. I spent hours collecting evidence. Screenshots. Emails. The travel invoices that clearly showed they booked rooms on the same nights, even though company policy required separate lodging. It wasn't anger guiding me anymore, it was precision. Every document was a brick in the quiet wall I was building around my revenge. By noon, I sent an anonymous email to HR with everything attached. No threats. No drama. Just truth. Cold and documented. Then I closed the laptop and left the house, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. The next few days were oddly peaceful. I went back to my morning runs, started eating real food again, even stopped checking my phone every few minutes. It's strange how grief can feel like freedom once you accept it. But peace is a way of being interrupted. 3 days later, my phone rang while I was at the gym. Unknown number. I almost ignored it until I heard the voice on the other end. James, it's Tessa. I paused, towel slung over my shoulder. Her voice was shaky, brittle, like glass ready to break. I don't know what you did, but I just got called into HR. They said someone sent them things. I didn't say a word. She continued, panic creeping in. Mike's been suspended. They're investigating. James, this could destroy my career. Please just talk to them. Tell them. I cut her off. Tell them what? That you weren't sneaking around with your boss? That you didn't lie to your husband for months? I made a mistake, she said, crying now. I was confused, okay? I didn't mean for it to go that far. Confusion doesn't happen in hotel rooms, I said quietly. It happens in people's heads before they make choices. There was silence, just muffled sobs on the other end. Then she whispered, I'm losing everything. I closed my eyes. Welcome to my world. And then I hung up. That night, I sat on the couch, scrolling through old photos, vacations, holidays, moments that used to mean something. In one, she was kissing my cheek at Christmas, her arms wrapped around me. For a second, I almost pitied her. But pity fades when you remember the nights you slept alone while she was with someone else. 2 days later, word spread online that Mike had resigned. Personal reasons, the company said in their statement. Tessa was placed on leave pending investigation. The irony didn't escape me. The woman who built her career on perfect public image was now erased quietly, like a smudge the company didn't want to acknowledge. But revenge, I've learned, isn't about destruction. It's about truth being seen. And I wasn't done. I reached out to a few mutual friends, the ones who used to host couples dinners where Tessa played the perfect wife. Over casual coffee, I let details slip, the kind that sounded accidental but weren't. By the end of the week, everyone in our social circle knew. Not because I told them, but because Tessa's lies couldn't survive the light anymore. One of her closest friends, Claire, called me in disbelief. James, I can't believe she did this to you. You were good to her. I was consistent. I replied simply. Maybe that's not exciting enough for some people. In the evenings, when the loneliness hit hardest, I forced myself to work on the renovation project I'd been postponing for months. Every hammer strike, every stroke of paint felt like reclaiming something. My space, my pride, my identity. One night, while sanding the living room wall, I caught myself smiling. It wasn't joy exactly. It was peace. The kind that comes when you finally stop trying to fix someone who was never broken, just selfish. The following week, Tessa showed up at my doorstep. She looked nothing like the woman who once strutted through offices in designer heels. Her hair was unkempt, eyes swollen, posture defeated. James, please, she said quietly. I don't have anyone else to talk to. I leaned against the doorframe. You have Mike. Her lips quivered. He blocked me. He said I ruined his life. I almost laughed. Looks like you two finally have something in common. Tears streamed down her cheeks. You're enjoying this, aren't you? I shook my head. No. Enjoying it would mean I still care. I'm just done. She looked past me, into the home that used to be hers, voice trembling. I don't know who I am without you. I sighed, the weight of years pressing against my chest. Then maybe you should have thought about that before you try to be someone else. And with that, I closed the door, softly, but finally. That night, as rain began tapping on the windows, I sat on the couch and realized something powerful. Revenge wasn't the goal. Freedom was. And I had it. Still, I couldn't help but think of one final act, the kind that would close this chapter for good. And that's exactly what I planned next. 2 weeks passed, and for the first time in years, I woke up without waiting for an apology that would never come. The house felt different now, not empty, but mine. No perfume lingering in the air, no unanswered calls echoing in my mind. Just quiet, steady peace. But closure isn't something that arrives politely. Sometimes, you have to create it yourself. That Monday morning, I drove downtown to finalize the divorce paperwork. My lawyer, a calm older man named Mr. Reynolds, glanced over the documents and said, "You handled this cleaner than most, James. No anger, no chaos." I smiled faintly. I learned that silence leaves the loudest mark. When I walked out his office, I didn't feel relief. I felt a strange mix of sadness and strength, like walking away from a burning house, knowing it's gone, but at least the fire's out. Later that evening, while organizing files on my desk, I came across an old flash drive. Inside were all the photos from our first years together. Vacations, anniversaries, birthdays. Every image looked like proof of happiness. But I knew now that some smiles were rehearsed. Instead of deleting them, I created a private folder titled Lessons. They weren't memories anymore. They were reminders of how easily love can be mistaken for loyalty. The following weekend, I got a message from Tessa. It was short, desperate, and painfully familiar. "I've been let go. I'm sorry for everything. Can we talk?" For a long minute, I just stared at it. Once upon a time, those words would have torn me apart. Now, they barely stirred a ripple. I typed one sentence back. "You already said enough." Then I turned my phone face down and never replied again. A few weeks later, I learned through mutual friends that she'd moved out of state, trying to start over. No job, no mic, just a trail of mistakes she couldn't outrun. I didn't wish her pain. I just wished she'd understand the cost of deceit. But the real victory wasn't in her downfall. It was in my rise. I started focusing on work again, took on projects I neglected, even started painting, something I hadn't done since college. One afternoon, a colleague, Lily, stopped by my office. She'd always been kind but distant, respecting my boundaries through the chaos. She smiled softly. "You seem lighter these days." "Maybe I finally learned the difference between peace and pretending," I said. That was the first time I'd smiled for real in months. Weeks turned into months, and slowly, my life found rhythm again. Morning coffee, evening jogs, weekends spent rebuilding what mattered. Not the marriage, but myself. And one crisp Sunday morning, I drove out to the coast. The same place Tessa and I had once gone for our honeymoon. The waves crashed against the rocks, the air sharp with salt. I pulled the divorce decree from my jacket pocket, folded it once, and tossed it into the sea. Not out of bitterness, but freedom. Standing there, I whispered quietly to myself, "You did it, James. You let go." For the first time, it didn't hurt to say her name in my head. She was just someone who once taught me what not to settle for. When I got back to the car, my phone buzzed. A message from Lily. "Coffee later." I smiled, not because I was ready for love again, but because I finally wasn't afraid of it. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I realized something profound. Revenge had started this journey, but peace finished it. Tessa had taken my trust, my patience, and my time. But in the end, I got something greater, clarity. And sometimes, that's the most powerful revenge of all.